Okay, I need a volunteer this morning. That is awesome. Right away, hands go up. Going to fight between these two brothers. You haven't even heard what I'm going to ask you to do. That is crazy. All right, now I got to think of something really embarrassing for Camden. Camden needs something really embarrassing. All right, I'm sorry, but you're not qualified. Sorry. The individual that is going to get my $1 bill, and I know you would have been $1 richer if you were qualified, but I don't see a wristwatch on. Do you have a watch on, either of you? What's that? What's that? That's not a wristwatch, though, is it? All right, okay. I need a volunteer. You get this $1 if you volunteer, okay? You got to have a watch on. Somebody with a watch. Nobody wants to do it. I will not embarrass you. You can really, this is easy. All right. Kathy Giddings is my volunteer. Let me see the watch. Make sure you're not lying to me. All right. I've been watching the Senate confirmations. I got to check truthfulness here. I'm sorry. I just crossed a line. I didn't say anything, John. Verified. I verified. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. I just threw that out there for humor's sake, not political sake. All right. But seriously, that should have been added to our prayers. We need to pray for our country, don't we? We do. All right, so Kathy, here's the deal. I'm giving you that $1. You're going to earn your $1, because here's what you got to do. I can't forget this at the end of the service. You've got to remind me that I gave you $1. All right, so if I get to the prayer, don't interrupt the prayer. Let me go ahead and pray. I mean, that's between God. We don't want to interrupt that. But afterwards, just stand up with your $1 and say, Jeff, you forgot the $1, because I tend to forget things sometimes. All right, so cool. You can do that. And then it really is yours. You get to keep the $1. All right, cool. So here's the deal. We're going to talk about perspective today. Perspective. How we see the world. Right? Perspective is what eyes are you using? And isn't it true that you have a different perspective than your children do? Especially if they're little children. Your little children see things way differently than you do. And I wonder sometimes if God is like, okay, you guys are like children to me. He calls us children, right? And I think he's thinking of us as little children because we see the world so different than he sees the world. So I just want to throw up 3 examples I found of actual things that children have said because they see the world differently than we do. So first of all, a 3-year-old girl is looking at a photo album and sees a picture of her mama. And when she looks at that photo album and sees a picture of her mama, this is what she says. That's me when I'm bigger. That's a different perspective, right? I mean, it's probably true that when she grows up, she's going to look just like her mama. So that's what she says. That's me when I'm bigger. She just has a different perspective than we do. The second one, there's a little boy. He's 6 years old, and he asks his dad, can we get a cat? And Dad says, no, we can't get a cat because remember, your mom is allergic to cats. So he simply asks this question next. When Mom dies, can we get a cat? A 7-year-old girl is told what's for dinner. And when she's told what's for dinner, she goes with the attitude of a teenager, salad is ruining my life. Kids have a different perspective than we do, don't they? So we see the world one way, they see it a different way. And I imagine God is like, okay, don't you see this relationship you have with your kids is the way I look at you. I look at you and I say things to you and you're like, I see that different than you do, God. I see that different. And he's like, no, I want you to have my eyes. I want you to have my heart. I want you to have my passions. I want you to be different. I want you to look at the world differently. I don't want you to look at the world the same way everyone else does. I want you to see it through my eyes. I think that's really God's desire for us. So we're going to go back to our series for the year, which is A Generous Life, just for one Sunday, because Jesus is going to talk about money today in his story. And what he wants to do is get us to see money the way he sees money. Now, quite honestly, we don't see money the same way God does typically. We see money as our insurance policy, as our shield, as our security. We see money as that thing that is actually going to buy us some security so that bad things don't happen to us. And the reality is, though, you can't have enough money to keep bad things from happening, right? You know that, and yet you still feel like, this is how you see money. I see money this way. If I have enough, I'm okay. I'm secure. Now, some of us, we see it as a ticket to a better life. It's a better vacation. It's a better life. We can make it if we have money. If we have money, we have it. We can have the pleasure of the world. And we know because we just studied joy. Joy is a long-term thing. It endures, but it is not the quick passing pleasures of life, because we quickly adapt to whatever we are experiencing, and you cannot be happy and elated all the time. It just doesn't work that way. But you need peace that endures, and so money cannot buy that peace. It cannot. And yet, if we see things the way that God sees things, there is a joy that goes beyond explanation when we understand money in the way God wants us to understand money. Some of us see money as a status symbol because it's the cars we drive, it's the house we live in, it's the watch we wear. It's the watch Kathy wears. That was a pretty watch there, Kathy. Status symbol. We're proud. No, don't we do that? What we wear, what we live in, what we drive, that's a status symbol. And yet God's like, all this passes away. None of this lasts. How can you say this is the meaning of life? And you know, if you have a lot of stuff, that doesn't make you happier than your neighbor who doesn't. I had one of my best friends going through high school. He was poor, lived in the back of a duplex, and I lived in a great 2-story house, and there was such a difference between our two homes. And yet I spent a lot of time at his house, not because there was a lot of sadness in my house, but because there was a lot of joy in his. Besides, that's where the garage band was, so that's where we practiced. But it was just a lot of fun there, and we enjoyed it because they didn't care they didn't have money. In fact, they, in a lot of ways, had a better perspective. They had God's eyes on what money's all about, because they tended to give a lot away to their neighbors that were in need. Crazy, right? Not crazy. This is God's perspective. This is the eyes we need to have. So the way Jesus wants to share with us today a different perspective, a new way to look at money, is by telling a story. Doesn't he often do that? He loves to tell stories. I've got to warn you, though, this story, we've looked at it a couple of years ago, but we need to look at it again, because as we go through Luke, we're into Luke 16. This story, it's a weird one. It's one that maybe you will be a little uncomfortable with, because Jesus is going to use two worldly characters. There are only two characters in his story. Two worldly characters. One, a very wealthy man, and another, a dishonest man. And yet he's going to teach us how to have different eyes. His eyes. Because he just knows it'll free us. It'll bring us the kind of joy that we're longing for. It will change our perspective. We need these eyes. So let's look at that story together. Jesus told his disciples, his followers, there was a rich man whose manager, so he's a hired hand, was accused of wasting his possessions. And we're not told how. Jesus doesn't really care if we understand the details. He just wants us to get the scenario. He's probably skimming money. He's probably cooking the books. He's taking advantage. He's using up all the perks but not really working. Somehow he's wasting the rich man's possessions. So he called him in and asked him, "What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management. You've been taking care of all my stuff. I've been looking at the books. They don't match up. I want to know what's going on here, because you cannot be my manager any longer. I am going to have to let you go. You're done. This is it. You better have a very good explanation." So the manager said to himself, "What shall I do now?" That actually is the key question of this parable. This is how we understand the parable. By understanding that Jesus wants us to ask the same question. What do I do now? Now that I find myself in this situation, what do I have? How could I use this to better my situation, my life? That's the question, right? What do I do now? I can't wait. I'm going to lose my job. I know once he looks at all the records, I can't give an explanation to that. There's no way I can speak to this. I'm done for. What do I do now? So he starts going through his list. What do I have? What do I have? The master's taken away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig. I'm ashamed to beg. I have nothing. And then he thinks of something. Oh, wait. I have one thing. I know what I will do, so that when I lose my job here, because he knows he can't justify what he has done. He's crooked. He's cheated. People will welcome me into their houses. Why is that important? Because there's no social welfare system set up. And what he realizes is he's going to be out of work. He's going to have no pay. He's going to be destitute. But if he could somehow win some friends, if he could somehow make it so that they like me, and they will welcome me into their house, I could sit at their table, eat their food, and I could sleep in their bed, they'll put me up for the night. All I need to do is find some friends. I've been treating these people poorly. Probably he has been scamming them. He's been charging way too much interest on the loan, probably way more than is required. And that may be actually the reason why, again, Jesus isn't telling us, but it may be the reason why he's being called into question. You've charged them what? So here's his plan. So he called in each one of his master's debtors, those who owed the rich man money or goods. He asked the first one, "How much do you owe my master?" 800 gallons of olive oil, he replied. The manager told him, "Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 400. So, man, that's like a 50%, cut right in half. You owe 800, just change it. You only owe 400 right now. That's it. That's all you owe. And it's very possible that this manager who manages the affairs of the rich man, has actually just cut out all of his commission and all of the extra interest he put on that loan so that he gets absolutely nothing, but the rich man gets everything back that's owed to him. Very possible that's exactly what's happening here, because it was very common to do that back then. Everybody added on their tax. Everybody added on a little surcharge. In this case, quite a bit of surcharge. Now, think about the man who just got his debt reduced by half. He's like, "Oh, are you sure?" "Yeah, change it right now." He changes it. "Hey, this is crazy, but just you tell me if you need anything, man, I'll help you out. Whatever you need, just call on me. You can count on me." And you can bet the manager said, "Oh, don't worry, buddy, I will." Because he knows within hours he's going to lose his job, and he's going to be knocking on the door, and he says, "Remember when you said if I needed anything, I need food, I need a place to stay." So he's gaining for himself friends. He does this with another individual, he just goes down the list of all the people that owe the master money, and it finally gets back to the rich man, the master. And the master commended the dishonest manager. This gets confusing because you think, well, is he being dishonest right now? It's possible, but I think he's not. I think that he is actually just cutting out his commission and his interest, and he's just giving back to the master what's owed to the master. But he doesn't have to. He's just been fired. He could walk away from it, but he doesn't walk away from it. He takes the opportunity he has to get that debt down of those people that owed him money so that he could be friends with them and they'd welcome them into his house. So the dishonest manager, he says, he's commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. That word confuses us because we don't use that very often. We think of it as a negative word, but it's not. It actually means to be astute, to use your resources, to be wise with what you have. So here's a man who is acting wise, and he's being commended for it. Now, that story right there, that's it. That's the story. Now, Jesus comments on it, but that's the story. And it doesn't sit well because, man, this dishonest man, he cheated people, and yet now he's being commended. Jesus wants us to know that he has done well. He's done right. He did the right thing. And we're like, oh, that's just crazy. No way Jesus would possibly commend, congratulate, say, well done to somebody who has cheated people out of money. How could this rich man say, in effect, hey, I'm pretty impressed with what you've done here. You were in a pretty bad spot. I'm firing you. I'm so upset because of what you've done, and you should be out on the streets, poor and begging, because that's what you deserve. And instead, you've made friends with lots of people, and they're just going to welcome you into their home. Well done. Good job. We're like, no. How could that be? No. We don't like that, right? And yet, I want to share with you that this story of the whatever you want to call it, the shrewd manager, the dishonest manager story, whatever you want to call this story is actually very, very similar to the one we looked at last week. In fact, purposely similar. I think Jesus is trying to make a parallel here. Remember last week's story? It was the prodigal son. The prodigal son story and the dishonest manager story are actually pretty much the same story. Like, no. The prodigal son story, we love that story. The prodigal son story, it is the one, the father has a son. The son says, give me everything. That's mine, my inheritance. He goes and wastes it in wild living. And while he's wasting wild living, there's this famine, and he just runs out of money, and he's destitute. And he's like, oh, man, I'm in worse shape. And he gets a job feeding pigs, and that's just so demeaning for a Jew. He is in the worst possible low place he could possibly be. And he finds himself just wishing that he could go back to his father and at least be a servant of his father's. And so he makes a plan. I'll go say, I'm sorry, because my father's house he takes better care of his servants than I'm out here. I'm starving. I just want to eat what the pigs are eating. That's gross. I am at the lowest of lows. And he goes back, but on his way, his father gets so excited, sees him, and starts running towards him and hugs him and kisses him and welcomes him back, puts a robe on him, ring on his finger, kills the fat calf, has this huge celebration. It's an amazing story. It's one of the best stories ever told. Jesus is an amazing storyteller, and we love the prodigal son story. In fact, we love the prodigal son story as much as we hate the dishonest manager story. We're disgusted by this story. I mean, this is a story of a guy who wastes his master's possessions and then finds a way to wiggle himself into people's homes and makes friends with people he was formerly just being a cheat to. We don't like this story. This is an awful story. And yet, it's the same story. Really, it's the same story. It's told back to back. Jesus tells parallel stories to get a point across, doesn't he? He does this all the time. Both stories are about rich men. One who has a son who wastes all his possessions. The other who has a manager who wastes all of his possessions. And they both find themselves in extreme poverty and destitute, and they don't know what to do, and they're at their end, and they need to solve it. And the point is, you need to solve it now. What are you going to do now? Now that you find yourself in this situation, what are you going to do? One says, well, I'll go back and make myself a slave. Another says, well, I'll go just cut everybody's bills so that maybe I'll be welcomed into their house. And while they're doing this, they don't expect to be blessed beyond this. They just expect to have something that's better than the poorest and lowest position they find themselves in. A position that they have to eat the pig's food or find themselves begging on the street. They try to change their position. They do what they can, and along the way they find great blessing as the father restores the son to sonship, and the rich man commends this cheat because he actually acted wisely. And we're not told, but you could almost draw the conclusion that he actually got to keep his job. We don't know that. What we do know is Jesus is trying to make a point. And what point is he trying to make? You have options in life. They may not be many, but you have something. You have a little bit of something. But you only have a little bit of time in order to do something with that little bit that you have. You don't have much time. You probably don't have much to give. You don't have much time, but you have something. And Jesus is saying, I want you to do what you can with what you have, because time is running out. Not one of us knows how much longer we have. We so often take this life for granted, thinking it's, I'm young, I got all the time in the world. We just learned through the tragic event of Caitlin's death that is so not true. It is so not true. We don't know how much time we have. We even if you think, okay, I'm pretty healthy, I'm going to make it a long time, I'm okay. I feel good. I'm not worried and I'm careful. You realize the Bible says that our entire life is but a hand's breadth. And that's kind of a weird terminology. It's an old terminology, but a hand's breadth. You know, on a cold day where you can actually see your breath come out of your mouth and it disappears. At a certain point it disappears. You know how long it takes for that breath to disappear? Have you ever measured it? It's about a hand. It's a hand's breadth. That's what they mean by that. It comes out and it goes away. It's just a hand's breadth. That's life. You don't know how much time you have. It doesn't matter if you think you're going to live a long time. Every one of us knows we're getting older. The clock is ticking, and it's just a hand's breadth. It doesn't last. And it's sad when we just completely ignore the fact that we've been given a responsibility, we've been given something, we have an opportunity, and you may not find yourself at the lowest of lows, and you may be saying, I don't relate to that situation. The reality is you don't have to relate to this situation. Jesus doesn't want us to parallel the story. What he wants us to do is to realize you don't have much time. What are you going to do with your life? What are you going to make of it? What is it that you have that you can use to make a difference in the world? You see, Jesus, he sees money different than you and I have. And this could be possessions, this could be talents, this could be whatever you've got. He sees your dinner table different than you do. You see your dinner table as yours. He sees it as a gift that he's given to you that you can surround other people that are in need around that table, whether it's in your home or out at a restaurant or taking care of somebody at the food pantry. He sees things differently than you do. We look so often at money as a ticket to a better life. It's not. Or as status. Oh, I'm going to make myself look. It's not. Or security. There's not enough money to keep you secure. Money, according to Jesus, the way he sees money, this is his perspective. This is the perspective he wants you to see. He sees money simply as a tool. Are you going to use this to make some kind of difference? And that's why he goes on in his story and he says, for the people of this world are more shrewd, remember, wise in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. The people of the light are you and me. Those in this world, they know that they have resources and they have situations and they make better choices. And so he's just saying, I want you to do the exact same thing. I want you to make better choices with what you've been given. I am laying this in your hand. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it? He goes on and says, I tell you, use worldly wealth. Use what's been given to you. Use money as a tool. Jesus has given you permission. He's saying, this is what I want you to do. I want you to use this to make a difference. Use this to invest in other lives. He says, I want you to use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourself. Now, not like I gained friends for myself when I was a little guy and I had my piggy bank and I went around Denmead Street. It was a cul-de-sac. And I handed out money, my change, to all the kids because it made them look so happy. I thought, I'm so popular. It was funny because they kept asking for more. I didn't know the value of that money. This is not what he means when he says make for yourself friends, because they're going to be people that you impact with your giving, with your generosity, that you will not even meet in this lifetime. In fact, the people that sacrificed for this building that we're in over 20 years ago, that sacrificed and made the commitment and provided this, some of them we know you're here, some of them we've never even met. Praise God, though, because someday we're going to be in heaven and we're going to get to celebrate with, thank you for what you sacrificed for us. And many of us now are making sacrifices for the block, for families that we haven't met yet. There's families in this room that you haven't met yet because we have new families every week. And there's lives that are being changed because this is the whole idea of building lives on Christ. That's the block. That's what the block means. There's lives because of your sacrifice. And there's going to be a day, and it may not come in this lifetime, where you are going to meet people that you have impacted. In the future, you're going to meet people that you may pass on, and then you'll meet people that have been impacted by the investments and the gifts that you've given. Use this as a tool, God says, so that when it is gone, and all of us will lose it, every one of us, we can't take it with us. We know that's true. There will be a day where this will be completely used up, and we have no resources. We have nothing left. He says, come on. Then you'll be welcomed into eternal dwellings. He's just using his story to share with us. There's going to be a day where there'll be people welcoming you that'll say, you don't even realize that when you supported that kid to go to camp, because you support the church and we pay half the camp, and that kid went to camp. I'm one of those kids that was changed because of what you did. Your impact in my life affected me. We have to realize that when you support a child that's going on a mission trip, you don't know how many of those lives overseas or across the country or in the inner city when we do inner city work that you've affected because you are supporting that child. But there'll be a day when that person will greet you in heaven and they'll be so excited to see you. And at first you're like, who are you? And then you're going to become best friends because you made an eternal difference. That's the perspective that Jesus wants us to have. He doesn't want us to be thinking about, okay, this is mine, I'm going to hold on to it tightly. Man, we can wear our emotions on our sleeve, but boy, we sit tightly on our money. Some of us sit tightly. Right now, you're sitting more tightly on your right butt cheek. I guarantee it. You're holding that down. He's talking about money. He's not getting it. We need to give God what He's already given us. Because isn't it true that everything we have comes from Him? And in the story, come on, you're not the master. God's the master who provides everything. And God has provided for you all your riches. He's provided for you all your wealth. It's not you. It's God. He's given you a job. He's given you the ability to work. He's given you the creativity. He's the one. And what He's doing, and later in the story it says this, we're not going to go there, but later He says, look, what you do with this matters, because if you do well with it, I'm going to give you more to do more with. But what He wants us to get right here and right now is, look. You're like the dishonest servant, and you are. I mean, all of us have sinned. All of us have fallen short. We're like the dishonest servant. We haven't done the best that we could. We haven't been completely honest. We haven't been completely without cheat in our life. We're like the dishonest servant. We really are. And yet, it's the cross of Christ that pays that debt for us. And now that He has paid that debt, He says, okay, now what are you going to do? So you're a dishonest servant. But I'm the Father that welcomes you home as the wandering son who's wasted all my possessions, and I kiss you on the neck, and I put the robe on you, I put the ring on you. Come on, what are you going to do with what I've given you? You only have a little bit of time. You only have a little bit of time. Kathy, I remembered. You don't have to remind me. I need you to stand up, Kathy. Yes. Give Kathy a hand. Hold your money up in one hand. Hold your watch in the other. Show everybody your watch. May this be a permanent reminder to all of us that you only have a little bit of resources. You get to keep that. Hold your watch up. And you only have a little bit of time. Use it wisely. Thank you. Father God, today we come to you as people who, quite honestly, I imagine can feel right now that tension in us between, but this is mine, and realizing, but this is yours. And God, maybe that tension is healthy because it's getting us to think differently. It's getting us to pull against our own desires to spend everything we have on ourselves for security or for status or for just a ticket to a better life. God, I pray that we are beginning to see what you have given us as a tool to be used to change situations around us, like that family that has been changed because of the food pantry. Changed for eternity, because eternity is a whole lot longer than our hand's breadth. God, I'm asking you to continue to work on that change in me. Continue to work on that change in us. Help us to see what you've given us as a tool, and to see we only have a little bit of time. Help us to use it shrewdly or wisely for you to make eternal differences. Father, there may be some here today that so desperately need a relationship with you. They need to surrender their life right now to the Lord Jesus Christ, who died upon that cross for their sin. I pray for the courage to step forward to make that decision. Maybe there are families here that need to join. It's that this is my church home. And I just pray that you give them the courage to step forward, for prayer to step forward. I ask, Lord, for this to be a time of decision. In Jesus' name. Will you stand as we sing? It is your turn to respond. If you have a decision, I invite you to come.